Good morning.
Good morning. Andrew is on his way to assist with this conversation.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning. Just about CompTIA? Okay. We're coming forward today to address the board in relation to CompTIA Tech Plus. It is a course through essentially the association that is the gold standard for IT tech professionals. They provide coursework in a variety of IT functions. The Tech Plus course that I took with the approval of the board is a 12-week baseline course just to establish comfortability with terminology, with data storage, infrastructure, cybersecurity, all the major tenets of what makes up IT. I found it to be a very instructive and helpful course just in expanding my own knowledge and backing up existing knowledge that I've picked up while here at the board. And Kevin and I believe that a few more of these licenses for our 4 additional staff members in the IT department would be a great addition to the department and to the building as a whole. The course itself, the CompTIA Tech Plus complete bundle, would be $334 per person. This would give them full access to the coursework, which includes instruction chapters, instructional videos, labs for 6 different modules, and then they would have the opportunity with a test token to schedule a test at one of the participating Pearson licensing centers. I just went over on Home Avenue, which is like a 3-minute drive, and is very easy in and out. I think that especially after the election, this would be a great asset to help build up their foundational knowledge and make us stronger as an institution. Anything you add?
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that we all learn differently. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get adjusted to this new audio-visual system. Some people learn best by reading. Some people learn best by doing. Okay, let me try it again. Some people learn best by doing. Some people learn best by reading. Some people learn best by a little bit of both. And I think a lot of times, many of the times, we're training hands-on, and we can't give people, or I'm sorry, our employees, the foundational and educational knowledge to know why they're doing what they're doing. Sometimes it might be helpful for someone to know a history of why they're doing what they're doing with technology. And from what I've been able to glean from Andrew going through this would be a good way to cover all the bases of how people get trained and learn technical skill sets. So I think we together feel like this would be a good tool for our staff to get bigger and better.
So this is online asynchronous education?
That's correct. Yeah, there's no, CompTIA does not provide any in-person coursework, just all through the CompTIA platform. And like I said, the 6 modules, so it's all very intuitive. I found no problem at all taking it in order and being very comfortable with it as it was laid out. I completed it in, I believe, 5 weeks, so a little ahead of what they recommended, but just wanted to get it out of the way and educate whether it would be beneficial to the rest of the team.
Well, sounds like a good idea to me.
When do the students take the class? Is it during work hours? Do we make time available for them during the day to take the class?
It could be during work hours or outside of the job.
I don't have a problem either way. I mean, I think if you're if we're going to require them to take it, and they do it outside work hours, then you might be creating a comp time or an overtime situation. And since it's asynchronous, might be safer and less expensive to have them do it during work hours if their work schedule could accommodate that.
I would encourage them to do it during work, especially, I think we envisioned that this would be a benefit to them during any potential downtime after an election. After we certify any potential audit or recount, there will be some time that they can dedicate to it. And the modules are split up in a way that you might have 5, for a module, you might have 5 instructional videos, and they could range anywhere from 5 minutes to 25 minutes. So it's definitely built out in bite-sized pieces that I think could be realistic during a work day. If I did a decent amount of studying outside of work just to get comfortable for the test, I wouldn't tell anybody they can't do that, but I always envisioned it as something they would do largely here.
Yeah, I think that concentration is probably better in work, less distractions. It's probably a good place to do it. I will tell, I did make an inquiry to the Tech Cred department at the state that I'm contacted, I know, and asked if this would be a reimbursable expense. And they said there is, Tech Cred is a program that the state spends money to upskill incumbent workforces. And so this would be upskilling. Said that there's no prohibition against the government getting reimbursed to participate for it. So they do it up to $2,000 per employee. So even if it's a multi-year training, if there are different levels, come back at it. So it might be something, I support the idea as well. Might be something, a way in which to offset the expense as well. They have unlimited funding practically at the state level. They're using federal WIOA dollars to fund that program. So it's not like we're taking money from somebody else's potential training. The more people apply, the more money that comes into the state.
I'd be happy to research that and see if we can get that going. I wasn't aware that government qualified, but if it's available funds, I think it's a great way to use it.
And you said, Andrew, that when somebody signs up for the program, they have a year to actually complete the module or to actually take the test. Is that correct?
That's right.
But you did it how fast?
It was 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, good.
Do you need any formal action from the board on this?
I don't think we necessarily need formal action, no. I think just more than anything. Wanted to bring this to, the 4 of you, just so that, Andrew and Kevin could at least relay their experience of kind of being the first ones to go through this and make sure it was something the board was in favor of. But yeah, I don't think we need any formal action.
Okay. Any disagreement on this? There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pardon? Next item on the agenda is reallocation of general funds.
So you should have a sheet of paper behind tab 5 in your binder. Cheryl had put this together. She and I have been kind of working on this the last, week or so, kind of getting an idea of where we think we're going to be monetarily heading into the end of the year. And so we're going to have a little bit of extra money in some non-payroll accounts, and we need some money moved into payroll-specific accounts. So what you see is $135,000 that would get moved from our contract services account into our part-time account, $25,000 that would get moved from our other expenses account into our full-time account, and then $25,000 to be moved from our rentals account into our PEOC account. That was the last one, correct? So this is just to move some money around so we can make sure we can cover all our payroll costs for the end of the year.
Is there a motion to transfer the funds as just described?
So moved.
Debate on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion is adopted without dissent.
Yep.
couldn't remember who went first. Next item on the agenda is off-site pickup, drop-off locations.
And I think Josh, Brian, do you guys want to come up and talk about this item specifically? Make sure you turn the microphone on too.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
All right, so as we've talked previously, we're looking at having no bag pickup and drop off here, just with the traffic flow problems that could occur and early vote being in the same exact building now. We're looking at roughly, as it stands right now, 20 off-site locations where we would send U-Haul trucks, vans, combo the two, out for bag pickup and drop off the Saturday before and the day of the election day. We've got quite a few yeses so far, but some have been inquiring about receiving payment for doing so. I think if we were able to do a payment, we get a lot more yeses and make us closer to our goal and be ready for election day. So basically we're asking you if you guys have a set number in mind, or if we're allowed to do it, period, or
What do you think it would take?
I was thinking 100, but I mean, 54 the Saturday, 54 the day after. It's 2 hours for the Saturday, and roughly could be 2 hours for election day, depending on when everyone gets back from their polling locations.
You think that would be enough to change a significant number of minds?
So right now we've reached out to 20, like Brian said. We have 16 that have confirmed doing it as yeses. Out of the 16 that's confirmed, there's been one inquiry about being paid. They said they're going to do it, but they said it'd be much more of a benefit if they were to get paid doing it. And out of the 4 that have not that have not given us a solid yes or no answer, 3 of them inquired about being paid. I think the number that Brian just mentioned, I think that would be sufficient to get them on board.
What type of locations are you seeking to use?
So basically our polling locations, for the most part, they're already current polling locations. And we're looking at other avenues because when I had met with the executives, we had discussed, having it here or all off-site. So like facilities like Midway Plaza, which is just down the street, stuff like that as well. We're using schools, community centers. We tried to do it so that we have all the polling locations and the pickup drop-off sites. We try to do it central to those polling locations that would be dropping off at that site.
Are the 4 holdouts, are they polling locations?
Midway's one, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
3 out of-
are they used to getting paid?
3 out of the 4 are polling locations. I'm sorry, 2 out of the 4 are current polling locations.
Well, I don't have any opposition to paying a private landowner who has a piece of property that we really want to be at because of its geographic location value, as well as the openness of their parking lot and the fact that on a Tuesday night they'll be empty, so people can come in and do all that. I would remind that under state law, any government-owned building we get to use free of charge. So if you're using high schools or something like that, or that has a nice parking lot in the flow, they
So-
wouldn't be eligible for being paid.
I was asked this question prior to the board meeting. If you look at that statute, that deals with polling locations, and you're correct, 100%. You cannot charge for a polling location. It doesn't mention the prohibition for what you're doing here is giving out supplies, pick up and drop off points. So the statute specifically deals with polling locations. This isn't a polling location. This is a drop off and pickup of materials and supplies. So it would be my opinion, the statute doesn't prohibit it. They know that there's going to be pickup and drop off points, and they could have prohibited it, but because they didn't specifically say, I think It's to the board's discretion, but I still think you have to act, which you always do, reasonably with a fiduciary responsibility. So if you did that, obviously any payments would have to be reasonable related to what the actual activity is.
Well, if they're not polling locations, then, and we should offer, and we do offer a payment, then we have to offer it to all of them, including a publicly owned facility, if that's the interpretation of the statute.
Well, they're not a polling location that day. So they might be a polling location another day, so not to create any confusion. So are all the places you're going to have drop-off and pick-up also polling locations?
So everyone that's dropping off or picking up, those are all supplies for the polling locations.
No. The actual locations,
The
are
actual
those?
locations themselves will not all be polling.
Okay, so there's a mix.
And then you'll have the Saturday the 1st, and then you'll also have Election Day, November 4th.
So I guess, because I don't want to create confusion this morning. I believe you could compensate them reasonably, regardless if they're a polling location or not, regardless if they're a public or private, because they're not doing a polling location activity that day. It's not a polling location on that day. It's a drop-off and pick-up point that day.
Well, to be more specific about the timing, the polling location closes 7:30 or later if the courts rule. At that point, it's no longer a voting location. Okay. So even if you do have a supply location for return to the board after then, that's no longer covered under the polling location. So my interpretation would be that we would be justified or able to pay them for the use as a supply depot.
So I'd clarify, at that time, it's not a polling location.
Right.
And I just want to note that we never do anything unreasonable here.
I think I said that in my comments, but
I think, we may be legally free to pay some and not others, but I don't think it would be a good idea. I think, we need to do this on a uniform basis. And $100, if you think that that would be sufficient, strikes me as quite a reasonable.
Yeah, so the idea is $50 for pickup, $50 for drop-off,
That's correct.
$100 for the election day, or for the elections
Yeah.
period.
But we're going to use all the sites for both pickup and drop-off.
Yes. Yeah, that would be too confusing to split them up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's not do that.
Well, I'll move we authorize $100, $50 drop-off and pickup fee.
Let's just make it 100 for both.
100, yeah. Yeah,
You're saying, so 200 total then?
No,
no, 100 total.
not 100 for each, 100 for both.
Oh, both days, okay. I thought you meant both, 100 for pickup and 100 for drop-off.
And that would be 100 each. I said 100 both.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any debate on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is adopted without dissent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the Blue Crest quote.
And so this is behind your binder in tab 7. We've spoken about this at the last couple meetings, but for each of the last 2 meetings, we've had 3 board members. So just to kind of summarize, this is something we've been talking to Blue Crest about for being able to track our ballots outbound and inbound of where they're kind of at in the postal stream between both software and hardware along the way, and what the total quote is a little over $31,000. One of the things we're kind of looking at now, though, is obviously as we're getting closer to this November election, I think this is something we need to kind of push off a little bit now. I think when we originally brought it up, we still had time for November. I think now that we're getting closer and closer, it's not really feasible, and especially when some of these expenses, I think it was the modules cost up top, if I remember correctly, was actually a prorated fee. So, we'd be paying that as if we were using it, when at this point, I don't think it's feasible for us to be able to use it for this November. So I think what we can do is we can kind of look at if we can come back to talk to this for the May election next year. And if I remember correctly, I think it's on the back page. Yeah, part of this was, like I say, a prorated rate, and the full rate actually starts on end of March next year. So if we talk about this maybe end of this year, early next year, or maybe as we're putting our budget together, we can kind of prepare correctly for next year if the board's in favor of going this route.
I'm wondering why we don't just get it over with and decide now for then.
If the board would like to do that, that's fine by me.
As opposed to risking waiting till it's too late next time.
So if we had this, remind me what it does. My recollection is it better informs us of where an absentee ballot is in the mail process.
Correct. So, yeah, with the IMB, so let's say on the outbound ballot, the IMB is very specific to each voter, and that information is comes out of the Blue Crest system and applies the IMB after the ballot is in the process of going through the inserting machine. So we'd be able to use that IMB. If somebody were to call and say, hey, it's been 2 weeks, I haven't gotten my ballot, we'd be able to look up what the code is for that particular voter, that IMB, do a search in the USPS track and trace, and find out just where that ballot is in the stream. It could be somebody said they wanted their ballot mailed to Florida and they never went to Florida, and we can tell them, well, that's why you didn't get it. It's in Florida and you're in Hudson. So we'd be able to kind of have some we'd have some knowledge there. Also on the return side of things, so the red envelope that comes back to us, which is what the ID envelope is placed within, that red envelope is addressed back to us. That would have a unique IMB that would be pre-printed by our envelope vendor. And as the red envelope is dropped down in the inserting machine, a camera would take a picture of that unique IMB and assign that IMB to whatever ballot that envelope is being attached to. And then that way, so for instance, it's my ballot and I return my ballot on October 10th, and let's say it's November 2nd, and I look on the board's website, there's no information about my ballot being accepted back by the board for being counted or not counted. I'd be able to call the board and ask, hey, did you not get my ballot, whatever the case is. We'd be able to then get into the track and trace system as well and look up that IMB for that unique voter and say, okay, well, it looks like it's been sitting at this post office for the last 2 weeks and it has not gotten to us. So I think the only outlier to any of that is we're relying also on the postal system to make sure that IMB is being scanned in along the way. If it says it's still up in Cleveland and that was the last scan, but let's say it's actually worked to your local post office but they didn't scan it, we wouldn't have that information. It's based upon where the last scan is, but that's the kind of information it would tell us.
In your scenario, you said you returned your ballot on August 2nd. Do you mean you put it in the mailbox?
Correct,
Mailed
yeah,
it back?
I mailed it back or put it into a blue drop box, whatever the case is, correct.
So for $54,000, we could have some nice-to-know information. What do we do with that nice-to-know information? What does that obligate us to do? We tell the voter, if they call, what does it obligate us to do? Call the post office?
I think the only instance where we would probably call the post office is, and I'll just use Hudson again as an example, is let's say we got 50 phone calls saying, hey, I live in Hudson and you guys still aren't receiving my ballot back. We'd probably at that point call the post office and say, hey, we're getting a lot of phone calls from this specific community or this specific part of the county saying that they mailed their ballots and we have not received them and it's been a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case is. I think at that point we would interact with the post office. But I think if it's people just calling to say, hey, I mailed my ballot back a week ago and you haven't gotten it, I think it's those one-offs we would just be tracking that voter.
If we called the post office with the information that we think we have based on the tracking, what will they do?
I would think they would escalate and look at that particular postal facility and find out, do they have a tray of ballots? Maybe they got buried under something that just didn't go to the next sorting facility or work its way to us. I think that's what they would look at, kind of like we see after the election, where sometimes we get a large number of ballots back for maybe a part of the county or a community itself that, for whatever reason, they were in one postal facility and didn't work their way to us timely.
We don't really know what they would do. They could just hang up.
Yeah, we don't know if they'd do anything, correct. All we would do is basically be asking or telling them, hey, we're running into this issue. After that, it's up to them whether they would do anything or not.
We'd tell the voter could call the post office.
Correct, yep. Yeah, if we see that, again, I think I've used Firestone Park Post Office multiple times as an example. If we see that that ballot's been sitting at the Firestone Park Post Office for 2 weeks, or at least that's the last place it was scanned in, yeah, I think that's what we would do. We would tell the voter, look, go ahead and call the Firestone Park Post Office last week and see as it was there. If it moved past that and they didn't scan it somewhere, we wouldn't know that. Or if it's still at their facility and they didn't do anything with it, we don't know anything about that. All we could tell them is that's the last place it was.
I do think it would be, even if nothing could be done to rescue that ballot, and I think maybe sometimes it could be done, but if we can tell the voter, here's where your ballot is, or at least it hasn't gotten past this point in the postal system, that would relieve any suspicion that something had gone wrong on our end, and that in itself would have value.
Well, I don't know why there would be any suspicion that we had done something wrong. Everybody that votes works with putting things in the mail and not having them be delivered or received. I think our response can simply be, if you haven't received it, here's where you can vote on election day with a provisional ballot or whatever you have to do. I mean, we're looking at, paying 30 grand, and then what renewals is a $54,000 figure there too. To get data that we actually already have ourselves. If we get a bunch of phone calls from the Firestone Park area, to use an example, we know that maybe we ought to call, if we're moved to do so, the Firestone Park branch and say, hey, we're getting a bunch of calls from your general area. Can you look around in the cubby holes there and see if you can find some ballots? I just, we actually get this data because we get the phone calls, right? So
Yes, we would get the phone
I'm
calls.
trying to figure out what we're going to be paying $50,000 a year for.
Well, and let me make sure, it's $54,000 for renewal. Is there an $8,000 fee on top of the $54,000? If we do
Turn my
this in
microphone on.
26 for the first time?
Yeah, so if we were to do this in 2026, and let's say hold off until we actually renewed, it would be the $54,000 number. We would not have that 8685 number at the top on the front sheet. It would be the 16,905, because that's them getting the software and everything set up and whatever hardware hooked up, and then an actual workstation set up. So it would be that 31,600 minus the 86, so that would be what, 23,000. So it'd be a $23,000 upfront cost in that scenario, and then the annual would be the 54,702, rather than we currently pay 36,829 for our annual fee. So it's a difference of $17,873 increase in the annual fee, in essence, to use the service year-round.
So did I just hear you say it's 54 plus 23 for the year 2026?
Correct, yeah, on that front sheet of page 1, you'd have the 16,900 plus the 6,045, so that's what, a little over, just under 23,000.
Yeah.
So that's a fixed cost of 23,000. And then if we were to wait until our annual renewal came up at the end of March next year, it would be an annual fee of $54,702 rather than the annual fee we would currently pay, which is $36,829. So it'd be an extra $17,873 to have this surface on an annual fee, additional annual fee.
So it's, in the first year, to use it in 2026, the first year would be 77,000 out of pocket.
Correct.
And then thereafter, it would just be the renewal fee in 2027, 2028.
Correct.
Of whatever they raised, that $54,000 fee, service fee over time.
Correct.
You know, it's, first of all, I say the same thing I said last time. I get irked. You spend $1 million plus on a system, and then they want to upsell you another $75,000 bell that they didn't include in the system. Maybe that was my ignorance as a buyer what's the list of all the things that this machine does that we didn't buy at the beginning, and how much does that cost? Copy machine comes with a stapler, it comes with a folder, it comes with a sorter, it comes with all these sorts of things, and they try to sell you that at the beginning. Maybe they tried to sell us this at the beginning, and I just didn't see it. So that's irksome, but I can get past that if there's value. I worry about having information, spending money to have information that we have no known benefit for, other than picking up the phone and saying to the post office, we have a ballot out there that you haven't given us. I mean, I'm just not seeing the benefit to us. I see the extra work, possibly, limited. But I'd like to confer with the post office what they say if we called them up and said, if we had this IMB tracker on all of our returning voted ballots, what would you do? And if they like the idea, if they say, well, we'd love you to have that, I have two things. I would say, well, will you pay for it so we can help you do your job? That would be my first question. But even if they said no, I'd like to know that the post office won't just say, thanks for telling us, click. Is it going to do any good?
I agree fully with what you're saying. If you want to have the benefit of voting from your breakfast table, there's some risk involved in that.
That's true.
And that risk shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who gets mail or uses the mail system. But the voting locations are always going to be there. They're always going to be open on the day specified. And you can go there, although maybe you don't want to because you risk it's going to be rainy or it's a bad neighborhood or whatever. But, to have that benefit, you have to accept the risk. And I agree, shouldn't be a big shock to you, but I agree with Brian that I don't know that it's really going to be worth it. You call up the post office. When you call up the post office now, do you hang up and say, oh, that was great? Oh, I really feel good now this is going to be handled? Of course we don't. We've all had things lost in the mail. I pay a lot of stuff now by wire transfer because of that. I don't know. I'm not sold on the value. And I think it's only going to increase our frustration level. You select to vote by mail, you take the risk. We work hard. And I think we work well to have the system run smoothly. But, when we offer these conveniences, they come with certain risk. And I think when they call in, you say, well, it should be getting there. You might want to call your post office or do whatever. Yeah,
what is the deadline to have this available for the May primary? What is the deadline that we would have to tell Blue Crest to implement?
I think if we gave them an idea of probably early next year, January timeframe, I think would be okay, because first ballots would go out, early April, so that would give them 3 months if it's something we want to do later.
So, well, why don't we ask the post office if this is a service they would pay for? I would, if it was free, I would probably be comfortable enough using it. I think you already checked with the supplier, the vendor, and they're not interested in giving it to us for free, and they're under no obligation to do so. Is that correct? I don't know if, I know the post office is under no obligation, but if maybe I'd like to know what they say about arming us with the ability. Didn't they? So in the last, when we started using when we got those special barcode readers, we had to buy those. That was a very low, inexpensive piece of equipment, wasn't it?
Are you talking about like the handheld scanner for the orange barcode?
Yeah, the orange barcode.
Yeah, we do have one of those, yes.
And that was not expensive. And that
Correct.
was to be able to read the date that they put it into the post office to see if they now meet the 4-day.
Correct.
Before it was 10-day. So they didn't give us those, did they?
No, we had to purchase that.
How long has this option been available?
Well, it's been available since we implemented the equipment, and it was discussed about doing it when the equipment was manufactured, and there's the camera that takes the picture of the IMB is on the equipment itself. But what we told them is, taking this whole thing on right out of the gate while we were in 2 different facilities was not something we wanted to do. So it's been available ever since the beginning. It was just going to be a matter of what the cost was going to be, and I didn't know what the cost was until we started having these discussions over the last couple months, and then that's where kind of everything here came to fruition of what the cost was.
Can they point us to anyone who has this feature in their system that we could contact?
Probably, I could
And
ask them.
just say, hey, what,
I'd like to know what other boards are doing that have this, what they've done with if the information has been not a burden, and if it's been beneficial, as Bill said, to rescue ballots in a reliable, in a way that is not more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, I can certainly ask that question.
Even if it's not Ohio.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be, well, could be, because Franklin has an older set of equipment that's from Blue Crest, but it might have this capability, so I don't know if Franklin utilizes it or not, but yeah, otherwise it would be out of state.
So let me just address a few points. First, on the irksomeness of this, it sounds like we were offered this option at the beginning and declined it for good reasons, I think. But I think we should be less irked because of that. The second is about the information value, the information itself. We know when a ballot hasn't gotten back to us. When a voter calls us and says, my ballot it doesn't show up in your system, we get that piece of information too. Well, we already knew we didn't have the ballot, but what we didn't know was that the voter says they mailed it, et cetera. That doesn't tell us where the ballot is, except, of course, if the voter is telling the truth, we know that it's somewhere between the mailbox they put it in and our building. What we get from this system is relatively precise, and not completely precise, but relatively precise information about where the ballot is, which could be useful in ultimately being able to rescue the ballot. It would, of course, depend on the cooperation of the Postal Service. But I think the history is that we sometimes do get cooperation from the Postal Service. And then finally, about the risk, it's certainly true that whichever method of voting you choose, you're taking on some risk. If you wait until Election Day, you're taking the risk that you might get so sick or be in an accident or not be able to make it to the polls. If you vote by mail, you're taking the risk that the ballot won't be delivered or won't be delivered on time or won't be delivered to the right place. Of course, you take risks, right? But what we're talking about is not should the voter have to take a risk, but what level of risk should the voter have to take in order to vote. In this case, we're talking about by mail. If we were talking about voting locations, we might be talking about voting in person. You know, the fact that one takes a risk when one chooses a method of voting doesn't say anything about what level of risk that should be, or what the board should do, that it, you know, whatever it can do, what the board should do about reducing the risk. So to me, it's kind of neither here nor there that yes, you're choosing to vote by mail and there are risks inherent in that. The question is, you know, are there steps that we can take, and if so, should take, to reduce the risk? And I think we need to find out more about how helpful this would be in reducing the risk. And so I think whatever additional information along the lines that Brian suggested that we could get would be helpful.
Yeah, I think there's time for further study, and yeah, I'm open to better, arguments that would justify a $55,000 and then some expense, because we're really talking, and also quantify the universe that we're talking about. We know how many ballots we mail out, we know how many are not returned, so all the ones that are returned are not subject to this. We even know the ones that are returned but late, but let's just talk about all the ones that are not returned, and then the ones that are returned late is even a finite number, more finite number. What is our, looking backwards the presidential election is a good one because there's a lot of ballots involved. Governor election also a good one because there's a lot of ballots involved. What is the universe that can we identify the potential universe that we're talking about? And then we can apply the money, the time, and then the number of possible resurrections we're working for.
Yeah, how many people wanted to vote, and for some reason, and they indicated a desire to vote by requesting a ballot, and then we didn't get it back. You don't know if they decided, no, I've changed my mind. I mean, we don't know the reason, but I gotta believe it's a minuscule amount. I mean,
A minuscule amount that what?
that erroneously didn't reach us, that the voter voted, the voter tried to get it back to us, and it never reached us. Or it never reached the voter.
Well, or it reached us, but too late.
Well,
And, then that could be for various reasons. It could be they waited too long to mail it.
that's right.
Or it could be that it got hung up somewhere and it eventually got to us. And we do get ballots late. What we don't really have a fix on is how many of those came in late because the post office, held it up somewhere, and how many came in late just because they were
We've made
mailed.
that known to the post office.
Well,
haven't
we make known to the post office when we receive ballots late, but we don't know why they were late.
Will this tell us why they were late?
Well, yeah, well, I mean, if the system shows us that it got held up in Cleveland for 8 days,
I don't need a system to tell me that.
why
No,
not?
I'm
How
being
do you know where it got hung up?
I'm being
You know it took a long time. You
Yeah.
don't know where it got hung up. And by the way, I could imagine I think there have been some instances in which mail has gotten held up in Cleveland longer than it needed to be, and somehow became aware of that. And we have been able, I think, to contact the post office in Cleveland and get them to do something about it. You know, there's a cost-benefit question here. I don't think we have quite enough information to answer the question. I don't think it's so easy to answer as, well, everybody takes a risk. This is just a risk. We shouldn't do anything to try to reduce it.
Let me ask this, get a better understanding of the system. So I'm an absentee voter, got my ballot, I filled it in, put it in the mail, I take it to a blue drop box, postal box, I mail it back. That begins, it's got this special coating on it. That begins its journey back to the Board of Elections. Let's say I'm in Florida and I'm mailing it back. So physically dropping it off the Board of Elections wasn't obviously an option. What do we know at the Board of Elections, and how do we know it as that ballot journeys back to us?
Well, we'd have all the information in the track and trace website. I mean, we wouldn't be going to this website to see where's every ballot in the process of getting returned to us. So we'd really just be looking when somebody says, hey, you know, it's been 2 weeks, I vote by mail every single time, I know how to check on your website that, you know, it's been counted or hasn't been counted, it's been received or not.
There's no dashboard about there's no air traffic controller dashboard that's telling us where all these ballots are en route back to us.
I don't believe so. They showed me a quick demo one day, and it was basically you type in the IMB, or you could even type in like the voter ID number or even last name and first name if you needed to go that route. And then it would narrow down which ballot you're looking for or give you the exact instance if you got a very specific county ID or IMB. And you'd be able to say, okay, I can see this one is at this particular post office and it was just checked in there this morning, which would make sense because you just mailed it 2 days ago, or it's been at this post office for, like I said, 8 days and we haven't,
So
where
as
it's
it
not
moves through
moving.
the U.S. Postal Service, and that from that box in Florida, and the way back here, as it moves through the U.S. Postal Service, they're taking pictures of it along the way. And they're recording that information in some system that we have access to.
Correct. It's kind of like a FedEx tracking or something. If you want to see where your parcel is along the way, as its checkpoint it hits, you'd be seeing that it's at that checkpoint. So that's where, if it's sitting somewhere for a long time, you'd probably say, why is it sitting in Cleveland for 8 days? But if you're seeing it go through the system, you can probably tell the person on the phone, well, we're seeing it move along. You mailed it 2 days ago. They tell us first class mail takes 5 to 7 days. Keep checking our website over the next couple days, but from what we can tell, it's moving through the postal stream.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure that, yeah.
Anything further on the Blue Crest quote? I think we need additional information.
Yep, I'll do my best to collect some additional information either before the next meeting or the meeting after that.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a big hurry, but let's not forget it until
Exactly.
it's too late for the May primary.
Yeah.
All right, next item is other business.
I have one item. Lance and I were approached by the Akron Bar Association's Leadership Academy. They asked if we would be interested in participating in their academy. They would like us to give their leadership class a tour of the facility and also a little bit of a presentation about becoming candidates for public office, like the technical things that are involved in it, try to avoid errors ahead of time. They asked if we would be willing to do it on March 25th, and we wanted to bring it up to the board to make sure the board had no objections to us participating.
I don't have an objection. Does anyone else?
I think it very appropriate that on March 25th, also known as Greek Independence Day, that we do this service to democracy. I think it's, I have no objection, and I think I've mentioned before, I think we should avail ourselves affirmatively to all community groups, not just those that come and ask us, that we are available. I think educating the public on what we do here through tours is a good thing. And it's outreach we've done successfully in the past when people have come to us, but I think we should do this and then learn from this and make this available to other groups who simply want to know better the election process, even if it's not as in-depth of how do you get on the ballot to run for office.
I think it would be good to have our prosecutor there, too.
To attend it as well? For sure. Yes.
Anything else? Other business? I do have one item. It occurred to me a week or so ago that in a previous meeting, some time ago, last year, I think, we talked about the board starting again, as it used to do a long time ago, doing voter registration. What made me think of it is the new ban on registering, on non-governmental entities registering voters at naturalization ceremonies. And we're not doing that, although I do think it would be a good thing for us to do. But more generally, we talked about it, and then it just sort of, I think we forgot about it. And I wanted to bring it up again to remind us this was Brian's idea, and I thought it was a good one, as many of his are.
I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing. I think it's an expensive idea, but it's a good idea. And as the state and all over the country, but as the state tries to de-emphasize private party registrations, I think it elevates the obligation of us, public sector, to do that. And no better than the Board of Elections to be a part of that, like we were for who knows how many decades when we went out and did voter registration drives, because we're not only sworn elections officials, we bring back the records to ourselves and quickly put them on the system at the registration deadline. So it makes sense. It's expensive. I mean, there's a cost to it. And I think the state should speak to that as they personally, my policy belief is the state does things to dissuade and rely less on private voter registration efforts. They should also assist in the increasing the resources for registering the public. It's not hard to register, but there's no better way than registering and giving your card to an election official and getting it on the system. So yeah, I mean, if I still think it would be a valuable service if we return to it in Summit County, and I think it should be done all over the state, quite frankly, and I think the state should assist in paying for that, but that's not within our purview.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I want to wait for the state to do that, because I think we might be waiting a long time. So the question is, you know, how can we get this ball rolling? We've talked about it. This is the second time. What can we do now? You know, I think it will need to be it'll need to be in the budget.
Yeah,
So
and
that's probably the starting point.
Put some numbers together.
Yeah, we put some numbers together, and we did include it for the budget request for the year we're currently in. And I'll be starting to work on the budget request. I think Cheryl and I talked about maybe meeting with the admin services this week to start putting together the 2026 budget request here, so we can start getting in front of you. So I will include that again in the 2026 request. I think part of the problem, well, I shouldn't say part of the problem, you know, the move was a very big undertaking and making sure we got the construction done and got moved in. And I think, in all honesty, with Brian sitting out in the audience, I think first step that we can easily take to kind of get the ball rolling is even just calling some of, you know, calling part-timers, even seasonal staff members, and just find out, hey, you know, what kind of availability would you have throughout the year? You know, do you think you could do a Monday through Friday for a couple months? Do you think you could do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday? We could at least kind of get some feelers out for our seasonal staff. And then that way, if we want to send 2 or 3 teams out for a day and we can only get 2 teams together, well, if that third team needs to come from a full-time, we can get our full team out there, full-time staff out there. I think we can start to lay the groundwork that way, and then even start to reach out to some of the facilities that we used to use. I think, and Brian would probably know better, what I think we used to use, like Acme grocery stores. I think what else?
Well, that was in the city. That was in the city because you need, you know, the commitment was 1 per every political subdivision, but because Akron was so large, we did 1 in every ward, the 10 wards. And that was, and we did retail places, so Chapel Hill, Summit Mall, places like that, as well as, we did all those. Many of them were free, and they were for 3 days, and they were prior to the 30-day voting registration deadline. So they were the 3 days. The state required expanded hours. So let's just say your voter registration deadline is on a Wednesday. It would be Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, or Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then it would cut off, and we get those cards back and get them on the system, and those people would be registered to vote. There's nothing that could keep us from doing it a week before the registration deadline, so that we have ample time to get the cards on. And but we advertised it as well. I think you're talking about I don't know how many days you want to do it, but 3 days, whatever, but I would deploy the entire county the same 3 days, because you're doing 1 round of advertising that we are going to be having a Summit County voter registration drive at these locations for these hours, uniformed hours, locations all over the county, so that everybody knows that they can go and do it at that time, rather than a kind of a wave across the county. Because if I see an advertisement for Twinsburg, but I live in Greene, you know, it's just going to be confusing. But anyway, did the county fund the program for this year?
To be honest, I haven't looked at what our request was for 2025 and what they actually gave us. I don't remember off the top of my head.
And I, too, decided not to re-ask about it because of the move. I mean, moving and getting up and running was a higher priority than reinitiating this, but I think that was probably a wise decision. But I'd like to see it done for the May primary for 2026. Those will be good voter registration cards.
Yeah, why don't we just set it as an agenda item coming up well before May? I think we're all in agreement on implementing it. The thing is, we've got to have some time to think about it and how to implement it, sort of thing.
Society has changed since we did this last, but I will tell you that my experience was that the commercial, the retail stores like Acme's and the shopping places, they didn't charge us rent because they were happy to have the foot traffic, because we were advertising, you know, people to come to their place of business, and so they let us do it for rent-free. Now, in this day and age, I don't know if, you know, how people will respond, but they're still in the retail business. So we also used libraries and government agencies. You know, in some places, the public library is you know, like in Richfield, it's as good a place as any. And town halls, we use those too. Wasn't too hard to find locations. The hardest part was doing the setup. You know, we had to deploy tables and chairs. A lot of times the places would give it to us, most of the times they wouldn't. And then we had to have people go pick up the cards at the end of the day to bring them back. staffing, we had, the PEOs were more than willing to spend 4 or 6 hours registering, sitting at a table registering people to vote. We had plenty of people that were willing to do it. That wasn't a challenge.
On the question of, all in one day versus waves, I think, all in the same, same 3 days, whatever, would be ideal if we have the staffing to do it. If we don't, though, we could do some places on one day, other places on another. If we have half the number of staff that we need to do one day, we could do 2 days, and I think that would be fine.
Some is better than nothing.
Yeah, but I could imagine maybe not having enough staff to do every place at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, we can start to kind of pencil something out and just kind of see where the plan takes us of how many staff it would need and how many locations we'd look at countywide.
All right, thank you. Any other business? I'm not aware of any personnel items that come before the board today. If there is no objection to adjournment, I declare the meeting adjourned.